Please pretend to be my husband tonight, she begged, unaware the stranger was her boss. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us go back to our main character. Her name is Grace Collins, and right now she is standing beneath the glowing awning of a 5-star hotel in downtown Chicago, trying to slow her breathing before her courage completely runs out. The glass doors behind her open and close again and again, releasing bursts of warm light, laughter, and music. Inside, a charity gala is already in full swing. Men in tailored suits, women in shimmering dresses. Conversations that sound confident, effortless, and expensive. Grace does not belong to that world, but tonight that world is about to judge her. She smooths the front of her dress with shaking hands. It is simple navy blue, carefully chosen to look elegant without trying too hard. Attaching. Her heels ache, but she barely notices. Her attention is locked on the phone in her hand, where unread messages keep lighting up the screen. Where's your husband? Everyone is asking about him. Grace, do not embarrass us tonight. Her chest tightens. Grace has told her family a lie. A small lie at first. One that felt harmless when she said it. She told them she was engaged. She told them she was finally stable, finally settled, finally someone they could be proud of. Tonight was supposed to be the proof. If she walks into that ballroom alone, everything collapses. The financial support her family promised to continue. The apartment she can barely afford. The fragile independence she has fought so hard to protect. Grace stares at her reflection in the glass. Her eyes look older than they did a year ago. Tired, determined, afraid. She takes a step toward the doors, then stops. Someone else is standing nearby. A man alone a few feet away, checking his watch beneath the soft glow of the hotel lights. He is tall, composed, wearing a dark coat that fits him perfectly. Not flashy. Not loud. Just quietly confident, like someone who belongs anywhere without needing to prove it. Grace does not know his name. She does not know his power. She does not know that he is Daniel Reed, a billionaire chief executive officer whose signature alone can change lives. All she knows is that she is out of options. Her heart pounds as she turns toward him. Every instinct tells her to stop, to turn around, to accept the consequences. But fear pushes her forward. "Excuse me," she says. The man looks up. His eyes are calm, sharp, attentive. He takes in her posture, the tension in her shoulders, the way she grips her phone, like it is the only thing keeping her upright. "Yes," he says. Grace swallows. Her voice trembles despite her effort to steady it. "I am so sorry," she says quickly. "I know this is inappropriate, and I would understand if you walk away." He does not move. She inhales and forces the words out before she loses her nerve. "Please pretend to be my husband tonight." The sentence lands between them, fragile and dangerous. The man blinks once. "I think you have mistaken me for someone else." "I have not," Grace says, shaking her head. I do not know you. But I need someone." "Just for tonight." 2 hours, maybe less." She gestures toward the ballroom doors. "My family is inside. They are expecting me to arrive with my husband. If I walk in alone, I lose everything. I will explain if you let me, but please believe me when I say I am not asking for money. I'm not asking for help beyond this." Her voice drops to a whisper. "I am asking you to stand next to me. Hold my hand. Say you are my husband. That is all." For a moment, the city noise fills the silence. Cars passing, distant horns, music pulsing softly through the glass. The man studies her face, not like someone judging her worth, but like someone trying to understand her fear. "How long?" he asks. Grace exhales shakily. 2 hours. After that, I disappear from your life." "And what do I get in return?" he asks. Grace almost laughs, but the sound catches in her throat. "Nothing," she says honestly. "I know that is a terrible offer." The corners of his mouth tighten, not unkindly. He should leave. He knows that. He has meetings in the morning. Decisions to make. A reputation built on control and distance. Yet something about her stops him. Not desperation alone, but dignity. The way she stands there asking for help without promising anything she cannot give. He glances at the ballroom doors, then back at her. One night, he says. No expectations beyond that. No contact afterward. Grace nods immediately. Yes. I swear. He extends his hand. Daniel, he says. She takes it, her fingers cold against his warm grip. Grace, she replies. Neither of them realizes it yet, but that simple handshake is not just an agreement. It is a contract, and the lie they are about to tell together is about to pull them into a truth neither of them is ready for. Grace Collins slips her hand into Daniel Reed's arm, and the moment her fingers rest against the sleeve of his coat, reality hits her. This is happening. The glass doors swing open, and warm air rushes over them as they step into the ballroom together. Music swells softly. Conversations pause, then resume. Heads turn. Curious eyes scan them as a pair. Grace forces her shoulders back and lifts her chin, copying the quiet confidence of the man beside her. Her heart is racing so fast it feels like it might give her away. This is the part where you smile, Daniel says under his breath, his voice calm, almost amused. She does. Inside the room feels larger than she remembered. Crystal chandeliers glow overhead. Waiters glide across the floor carrying trays of champagne. Every detail whispers money, power, and expectation. Grace feels all of it pressing down on her. Her aunt spots them first. There is a sharp intake of breath. A relieved smile. Then the questions begin. Grace finally, her aunt says, already stepping closer. And you must be the husband. Daniel does not hesitate. Yes, he says smoothly. I am Daniel. He extends his hand. Firm. Polite. Controlled. Grace watches in disbelief as her aunt's posture shifts, instantly respect flickering across her face. The lie is working. As they move deeper into the room, Daniel's hand settles lightly at the small of Grace's back. Not possessive. Not intimate. Just enough to sell the role. Her family surrounds them. Compliments fly. Jokes are made. Glasses are raised. Grace nods and smiles, answering questions on instinct, leaning just slightly into Daniel whenever the pressure threatens to crack her composure. But inside, her thoughts are spiraling. If they find out the truth, she loses everything. Her parents' financial support was conditional. Engagement first. Marriage next. Stability. Respectability. A life they approved of. They never believed her job was enough. Never trusted her independence. Never thought she could survive without a safety net. This night was her final test, and she had walked in holding the arm of a stranger. Daniel listens more than he speaks, but when he does, his words land with effortless authority. He answers questions about work without specifics. He compliments the event. He thanks her family for welcoming him. Grace notices how people lean toward him, how conversations bend around his presence. He is used to rooms like this. She is not. After what feels like an hour, Daniel murmurs, we need a moment. Grace barely has time to react before he guides her toward a quiet hallway just beyond the ballroom. The door closes behind them, muting the music. Grace exhales sharply, pressing her palm against the wall. Thank you, she whispers. I did not think I would survive that. You are holding up well, Daniel says. But we need to clarify something. She straightens immediately. Of course. This does not go beyond tonight, he continues. No personal favors. No future expectations. When this event ends, so does our agreement. Grace nods. I understand. There will be photographs, he adds. Public interactions. I will handle those. You follow my lead. Yes. And one more thing, he says, meeting her eyes. Do not fall apart in front of them. If you need to step away, you tell me first. Grace swallows. I can do that. A beat passes. Then she speaks again, her voice quieter. I should tell you why this mattered so much. Daniel does not interrupt. My parents tied my support to my engagement, she says. They believe marriage equals responsibility. If I had walked in alone tonight, they would have cut me off. Financially. Completely. She lets out a small, humorless breath. I have been pretending I did not need them. But the truth is, I was barely holding on. Daniel absorbs this without comment. "I am not proud of this," Grace adds, "but I am grateful you agreed." "For 2 hours," he reminds her gently. She nods. "For 2 hours." The door opens again and the music returns. They step back into the light side by side, playing their parts flawlessly. Grace does not notice the way several executives nearby recognize Daniel the moment he turns. She does not see the subtle glances, the sudden whispers. She only feels the fragile relief of survival. But somewhere beneath the surface of this carefully constructed lie, the real stakes are beginning to take shape. And neither of them realizes how expensive the truth will be when it finally arrives. By the time the first hour passes, Grace Collins almost forgets how close she came to disaster. Almost. She stands beside Daniel Reed near a tall cocktail table, nodding politely as a couple finishes praising the event. Her smile stays in place until they walk away. Only then does she allow herself a small breath. "Water," Daniel says quietly, already reaching for a glass and handing it to her. "Thank you," Grace replies. Her fingers brush his and she pulls back instinctively, reminding herself this is still an act. The ballroom feels louder now. The air thicker. Grace can sense eyes on them, measuring, comparing, judging. A few phones lift subtly, photos taken without asking. This is no longer just family. This is becoming more visible than I expected, Daniel says, his tone even. Which means we need clearer rules. Grace stiffens. "Rules, yes," he says. "We agreed to 2 hours. But within those 2 hours there are boundaries." She nods quickly. "Of course. Whatever you need." He looks at her, then really looks at her. Not as a role. Not as a liability. But as a woman standing on the edge of something she cannot control. "First," he says, lowering his voice. "Public affection only. Hand-holding. Light contact. Nothing that cannot be explained away." Grace nods. "Understood." "Second," he continues, "you do not share personal details about me. If someone asks, you redirect to neutral topics. I can do that." "Third," Daniel says, "after tonight, we do not communicate. No messages. No explanations. This ends cleanly." The word cleanly lands harder than she expects. "Yes," Grace says, though her throat tightens. "That was always the plan." Daniel studies her for a moment, as if gauging whether she truly understands the weight of what he is offering. "Good," he says. "Then we are aligned." He extends his arm again, a silent question. Grace takes it. As they move through the room, she notices how naturally he adjusts to her pace. He slows when she slows. Turns when she turns. The illusion becomes seamless. Her uncle approaches, glass in hand, suspicion flickering behind his smile. So he says, eyeing Daniel, "What exactly do you do?" Son. Grace feels the familiar spike of panic. Daniel does not. "I work in corporate strategy," he says smoothly. "Mostly behind the scenes." "Ah," her uncle replies. "Important work." Daniel smiles politely. "It keeps me busy." Grace watches the exchange in awe. He answers without lying outright, without revealing anything. It is a skill honed over years of power she cannot yet imagine. They move on. A few minutes later, Grace feels Daniel's grip tighten slightly at her waist. She follows his gaze. Across the room, a group of men in tailored suits have gone very still. One of them is staring openly at Daniel, recognition flashing across his face. Daniel shifts, placing himself half a step in front of Grace, blocking the line of sight. "Do not look," he murmurs. "What is it?" she whispers. "Nothing you need to worry about," he says calmly. "Stay with me." She does. They drift toward the far side of the room where the lighting is softer and the conversations less intense. Grace exhales, unaware of how close the truth just came to breaking through. "This is harder than I thought," she admits quietly. "Lying. Performing." Daniel glances down at her. "You are not performing," he says. "You are surviving." The words surprise her. "I do not usually ask for help," Grace says after a pause. "Tonight was not who I want to be." "Sometimes," Daniel replies, "the person you want to be and the person you need to be are not the same." She considers that. A server passes with a tray of champagne. Daniel takes one glass and hands it to Grace, then lifts his own. "To temporary solutions," he says softly. She hesitates, then clinks her glass against his. "To temporary solutions." The music swells as a short speech begins at the front of the room. Guests turn their attention forward. Grace relaxes, slightly grateful for the distraction. She does not notice the way Daniel's expression changes as the host thanks the event sponsors. She does not hear the name of his company mentioned in passing. She does not see the ripple of surprise move through the room. Grace is focused on one thing only. She has made it this far. But with every minute that passes, the lie grows more complicated. The rules they set feel thinner. And somewhere between survival and performance, something else is beginning to form. A connection neither of them agreed to, and one that will not disappear when the 2 hours are over. As the evening continues, Grace Collins begins to understand something unsettling. Daniel Reed is not simply pretending. He adjusts his posture when they approach a group, lowers his voice when conversations turn sharp, times his smiles so they feel natural, never forced. He does not rush her. He does not correct her publicly. He quietly positions himself between her and any question that might cut too close. Without realizing it, Grace starts copying him. When someone compliments her dress, she thanks them calmly, instead of deflecting. When an older couple jokes about marriage, she responds with warmth instead of nerves. She matches Daniel's pace, his pauses, his confidence. The act begins to feel rehearsed. At one point, they are stopped by a woman Grace recognizes from her parents' social circle. Elegant, observant, curious in a way that feels dangerous. "You two seem very comfortable," the woman says, eyes flicking between them. "How long have you been married?" Grace feels the familiar spike of panic, but Daniel answers before it reaches her face. "Long enough to know which arguments are worth having," he says lightly. Grace laughs on instinct, the sound surprising even herself. "And which ones are not?" she adds. The woman smiles, satisfied, and moves on. Grace exhales as they walk away. "You did that well," Daniel murmurs. "I did not think," she admits. "I just followed." "That is usually the key," he replies. They drift toward a quieter corner near the windows overlooking the city. The skyline glows against the night, sharp and distant. For a brief moment, the room feels far away. "I feel like I am borrowing your life," Grace says softly. "Your confidence. Your ease." Daniel considers her words. "You are not borrowing anything," he says. "You already had it. You just do not use it often." She looks at him, surprised. "You do not know me." "I know enough," he replies. The compliment lands deeper than she expects. A photographer approaches, gesturing politely. "Just a quick photo, please." Grace stiffens, but Daniel nods. He places one hand at her waist, guiding her subtly into position. Not too close, not distant, perfectly believable. The flash goes off. For a second, Grace forgets the lie, the pressure, the cost. She sees only the reflection of two people who look steady together. Then the moment passes. As they move away, Grace clears her throat. "You did not mention photos." Daniel gives a faint smile. "Visibility comes with rooms like this. But do not worry. I will handle it." She nods, trusting him without fully understanding why. They return to the center of the ballroom as dessert is served. Conversations loosen. Laughter grows louder. The tension in Grace's shoulders eases inch by inch. She notices something else now. People listen when Daniel speaks, not because he demands attention, but because he does not waste it. When he introduces Grace, he does so with quiet pride, never exaggerating, never diminishing. "This is my wife, Grace," he says more than once. Each time the word sends a strange warmth through her chest. In another life, she thinks this might not have been pretending. The thought startles her. Later, as the speeches continue, Daniel leans in slightly. "We are halfway through our time." Grace nods. Relief and something else twist together inside her. Halfway. They have survived this much. She should be counting the minutes until it ends. Instead, she finds herself noticing small things. The way Daniel checks the room before moving. The way he positions her so she always has space. The way his presence seems to quiet the noise around her. "You are very good at this," she says quietly. "At what making people feel safe." Daniel's expression tightens for a fraction of a second. Then it smooths again. "Safety is a perception," he says, "and perceptions can be managed." Grace studies him. There is something guarded behind his calm, something practiced. Before she can ask more, applause breaks out across the room. The host announces the final portion of the evening. Daniel straightens. "We should Rejoin them. Grace nods and slips her hand back into his arm. She no longer hesitates. The lie has settled into her skin, shaping her movements, her voice, her presence. She is learning the role faster than she ever expected. But roles have a way of leaving marks. And as the night moves closer to its end, Grace cannot shake the feeling that this temporary version of herself might be harder to leave behind than the life she was trying to protect. The applause fades and the energy in the room shifts. Grace Collins feels it before she understands it. The host thanks the guests again, then gestures toward a smaller stage near the center of the ballroom. A short announcement follows something about recognizing partners and families who support leadership and legacy. Grace's stomach tightens. This part was not on the schedule, she murmurs. Daniel Reed does not answer immediately. His gaze sweeps the room, calculating, anticipating. "We will be fine," he says calmly. "Stay with me." A server approaches, stopping directly in front of them. "Mr. Reed," he says, lowering his voice respectfully. "They would like you and your wife to come forward." Grace freezes. "Us?" she asks. Daniel nods once. "Yes." Before she can protest, his hand closes gently around hers. The contact is steady grounding. As they walk toward the stage, Grace feels every eye turn in their direction. The whispers begin soft but unmistakable. "Who is she? I did not know he was married." "She seems young." Grace keeps her head high, copying the composure she has learned over the past 2 hours. They reach the front. The lights are brighter here, warmer, exposing. The host smiles broadly. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we want to recognize the quiet strength behind success. Partners who stand beside leaders without needing the spotlight." Grace's pulse thunders in her ears. Daniel Reed and his wife Grace. The name lands like a weight. Grace hears it clearly now. Daniel Reed. The realization flickers through her mind, but she does not have time to grasp it fully. Applause erupts. Cameras flash. Daniel steps forward without hesitation, his grip on Grace's hand firm but reassuring. "Thank you," he says smoothly. "My wife prefers to stay out of the spotlight, but I would not be standing here without her." Grace's breath catches. She did not expect that. The host turns to her. "Grace, you must be very proud." All eyes shift to her. This is the moment. Grace feels the familiar heat of humiliation rising. The fear of being exposed, of being dismissed as decoration. But she remembers who she decided to be tonight. She lifts her chin and meets the host's gaze. "I am proud," she says clearly, "but not of titles or recognition. I am proud of integrity, of choosing people over power." The room grows quieter. Daniel turns to look at her, surprise flickering across his face. Grace continues, her voice steady now. "Leadership means nothing if it costs your humanity. I think we forget that sometimes." For a second, no one speaks. Then applause breaks out again, louder than before. Grace feels Daniel's hand tighten slightly, not in control, but in something that feels like admiration. As they step back into the crowd, whispers follow them, different now. "She is not just his wife. She has presence. She is not what I expected." Grace exhales as they reach the side of the room. "That was risky," Daniel says quietly. "I know," she replies, "but I could not stand there and say nothing." He studies her for a long moment. "You handled yourself with dignity?" The word settles deep in her chest. Across the room, Grace notices her aunt watching her closely. Not with suspicion this time, but with something like reassessment. Grace has passed the test, not because of the man beside her, but because she chose not to disappear when the room demanded a performance. And Daniel Reed realizes something unsettling as he watches her move through the crowd afterward. This woman was never meant to be a temporary solution, and the lie he agreed to is beginning to feel dangerously real. The gala begins to thin out. Guests drift toward the exits in small groups, coats collected, voices softer now, the night winding down. The pressure that once filled the room loosens its grip, leaving behind a strange quiet. Grace Collins steps out onto the balcony just off the ballroom, needing air. The city stretches out below her, a grid of lights and motion, alive and indifferent. The cool breeze brushes against her face, carrying away the last of her nerves. For the first time all evening, she allows her shoulders to drop. She hears the door open behind her. Daniel Reed joins her without a word, closing the distance, but leaving space between them. Not the polished proximity of a performance. Something looser. More real. You did not have to say what you said up there, he finally says. Grace keeps her eyes on the skyline. Yes, I did. She rests her hands on the railing, fingers curling around the cool metal. All my life, she continues quietly, people decided who I was before I ever spoke. Tonight, I did not want to disappear again. Daniel watches her in silence. I was terrified, she admits with a small, humorless smile. But it felt worse to stay quiet. You shifted the room, he says. That is not easy to do. Grace exhales slowly. Neither is pretending to be someone else. The words hang between them. Daniel turns slightly, leaning against the railing, now his posture less guarded than before. This is usually where things get complicated, he says. Grace glances at him. Usually when lines blur, he explains. When arrangements stop feeling like arrangements. She looks away again, heart tightening. We agreed this ends tonight, she says. I have not forgotten. Neither have I, Daniel replies. But his tone lacks conviction. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The city hums below. Somewhere inside, laughter echoes faintly as the last guests say their goodbyes. I should apologize, Grace says suddenly. For what? For putting you in this position. For assuming you would help. For asking you to carry my mess. Daniel considers her words. You did not force me, he says. I chose this. She studies his face, searching for signs of regret. She does not find any. You make it look easy, she says. Control. Confidence. Like nothing touches you. His expression shifts just slightly. Nothing looks easy from the outside, he replies. Especially when it matters. Grace turns fully toward him now. Does this matter to you? The question slips out before she can stop it. Daniel meets her gaze. For a moment, the practiced calm falls away. More than it should, he admits. Grace's breath catches. They're standing too close now. Not touching, but aware. Of the space. Of the silence. Of the risk. This was supposed to be temporary, Grace whispers. Yes, Daniel says. It was. Inside the ballroom, someone calls Daniel's name. The sound breaks the moment like glass. He steps back, composure snapping into place. We should go, he says. Grace nods, though part of her resists. As they walk back inside together, something has changed. The act no longer feels like an act. And for the first time, Grace understands the real danger of tonight was never being exposed. It was discovering what it feels like to be seen by the one person she was never supposed to matter to at all. The moment does not shatter with noise. It breaks quietly. Grace Collins is standing near the coat check, thanking her aunt for coming when the room shifts again. Not with applause this time, but with recognition. A ripple of attention moves from the entrance toward the center of the ballroom. Grace follows the direction of the glances. A group of executives has gathered near Daniel Reed. Their posture is unmistakable now. Deferential. Alert. One of them steps forward, extending his hand. Daniel, the man says, his voice respectful. The board would like a word before you leave. Board. The word lands wrong. Grace turns slowly, her gaze locking onto Daniel's face. For the first time tonight, his expression tightens. I will be there in a moment, Daniel replies evenly. Another executive joins them, smiling politely at Grace. Mrs. Reed, she says, it is a pleasure to finally meet you. Finally. Grace feels the air thin in her lungs. I am sorry, Grace says, forcing the words out. Bored of what silence. Daniel looks at her, then really looks at her, and Grace knows. She knows before anyone explains. Before the pieces finish aligning. Daniel Reed is not just confident. He is not just influential. He is the man whose name signs the future of her career. The billionaire chief executive officer. Her boss. The room seems to tilt. You work for Reed Holdings, one of the executives adds, casually, not realizing the damage he's doing. Daniel founded it. Grace's ears ring. She steps back, pulling her hand from Daniel's arm. You knew, she says quietly. You knew who you were the entire time. Daniel opens his mouth, closes it again. I did not plan to tell you like this, he says. Her chest tightens, heat rushing to her face. Embarrassment, anger, betrayal. So the rules, Grace says, her voice shaking despite her effort. The boundaries, the control, That was not about protecting the arrangement. That was about protecting yourself. That is not fair, Daniel replies. You let me stand in front of a room full of powerful people, she says. You let me speak. You let me believe I mattered. And all along you were the one person who held power over me. Heads begin to turn. The tension draws attention. Daniel lowers his voice. Grace, please. Not here. Here is exactly where this belongs, she says, lifting her chin. You said this would end cleanly, that there would be no expectations, but you never told me the truth. I was going to, he says. After tonight, her laugh is sharp, bitter. After I had done what you needed. That is not what happened, Daniel says firmly. I never needed you to perform. Grace shakes her head. You needed control, and I walked straight into it. She feels exposed now, stripped of the dignity she fought to claim. Every look feels heavier, sharper. You are my employer, she says. That makes everything tonight a lie. Daniel's expression hardens, not with anger, but with something like regret. I never saw you as an employee, he says. I saw you as a woman who needed help. And that makes it worse, Grace replies. Because you decided for me. She steps back again, creating space where there had been closeness. This ends now, she says. Not when the event ends. Not when it is convenient. Now. She turns, walking away before he can stop her. Behind her, the gala continues, unaware that the most important performance of the night has just collapsed. And Daniel Reed stands alone in the center of the room, realizing too late that the only thing he truly miscalculated was her. Grace Collins does not stop walking until the cold night air hits her face. She steps out of the hotel and onto the sidewalk, heels clicking sharply against the stone, her chest tight with anger she does not know where to put. Her breath comes fast, uneven, fogging in the chill as she forces herself to keep moving. She refuses to look back. Inside that ballroom, Daniel Reed still holds all the power. The room, the company, the future she thought she was building. And she wants no part of it. Grace reaches the edge of the block before she finally slows, pressing a hand to her sternum as the adrenaline drains from her body. Her phone vibrates in her purse. She does not check it. She already knows who it is. She is done. Behind her, the hotel doors open again. Daniel steps outside alone. He does not call her name. He does not grab her arm. He simply walks until he is standing several feet away, giving her the space she demanded. I am not here to explain, he says quietly. I am here to choose. Grace turns slowly to face him. Do not, she says. You already chose when you let me walk into that room without the truth. You are right, Daniel replies, and I will not defend that. The admission stops her cold. I should have told you the moment we met, he continues. I did not, and that was a failure of integrity, not strategy. Grace crosses her arms, bracing herself. This does not change what you are. No, Daniel agrees. But it changes what I am willing to do next. He reaches into the inner pocket of his coat and pulls out a folded document. Grace recognizes the letterhead immediately. Reed Holdings. I resign my executive authority for your department, he says. Effective immediately. Her breath catches. That is not possible. It is, Daniel says. The board will vote tomorrow morning. I already made my position clear. Grace stares at the paper, disbelief cutting through her anger. You expect me to believe you would risk your company for this? She asks. For you, he corrects. Because I crossed a line that power cannot excuse. He steps back, placing the document on the low stone wall beside them instead of handing it to her. I am not asking you to forgive me, he says. I am not asking you to stay. I am asking you to know that this was never about control. Grace's voice trembles despite herself. You could have ruined me. I know, Daniel says, and that is why I cannot walk away unchanged. Silence stretches between them, filled only by distant traffic and the hum of the city. You said this would end cleanly, Grace says, that there would be no expectations. Daniel nods, and I am keeping that promise. He reaches into his pocket again and places something small beside the document. The ring, the simple band they used as a prop earlier in the evening. This was always fake, he says. I am leaving it here so you never doubt that I know the difference. Grace looks down at the ring, then back at him. And what if I walk away, she asks. Then you walk away, Daniel replies. With your dignity intact. With no consequences. With my respect. The words land heavier than any apology could. Grace closes her eyes, briefly steadying herself. For the first time tonight, the choice is truly hers. Not pressured. Not negotiated. Not managed. She opens her eyes again, meeting Daniel's gaze. I do not know if I can trust you, she says. You do not have to, he answers. Not yet. She exhales slowly, the anger softening into something more complicated. This is no longer about a lie. It is about whether a man who gave up power can earn something far more fragile. And for the first time since the night began, Grace Collins does not feel trapped by the answer. Grace Collins does not answer right away. She looks down at the stone wall where the ring rests beside the folded document. Two symbols of a night built on pretending. Two things that once held power over her, now stripped of it. She reaches out, not for the ring but for the paper. Carefully she folds it once more and places it back where Daniel left it. You do not get credit for doing the right thing after doing the wrong one, she says softly. Daniel nods. I know. Grace exhales, the last of the tension draining from her shoulders. But she continues, lifting her eyes to meet his. You do get credit for not trying to buy your way out of it. The corner of his mouth lifts just barely. I am not asking for a transaction, he says. I am asking for a chance to be honest. Grace steps away from the wall, creating space between herself and the past few hours. When I asked you to pretend to be my husband, she says, I thought I was the one without power. I thought I needed someone to save me. She shakes her head slowly. I was wrong. Daniel listens, silent. I survived tonight because I chose to stand up for myself, Grace continues. Not because of who you are. And if anything happens between us, it has to start from there. Daniel's voice is steady. I would not accept anything less. Grace lets out a breath she feels like she has been holding all night. She reaches for the ring, then lifting it between her fingers. This, she says, holding it up, was fake. She places it back down, leaving it behind. What comes next, she adds, cannot be. Daniel meets her gaze. Then let us start without titles, without leverage, without lies. Grace nods once. Tomorrow, she says. Coffee. In public. As two people who owe each other nothing. A smile breaks across Daniel's face, real this time. Unguarded. I would like that, he says. Grace turns, walking down the sidewalk toward the quiet stretch of street beyond the hotel lights. After a few steps, she stops and looks back. One more thing, she says. Daniel waits. You are not my boss anymore, Grace says. And I am not your wife. He inclines his head. Understood. She smiles, then small but certain. And that, she says, is why this might actually work. Grace walks away, the city opening up before her, lighter than it has felt in years. Behind her, Daniel Reed remains where he is, watching the woman who challenged him in a way no boardroom ever had. The fake marriage ended the moment she walked out of that ballroom. What begins now is something neither of them can control. And for the first time, that feels exactly right.